Revelation 2222. From the 28th of January 1942. The limits of knowledge are set by man, not God. God has set a limit to knowledge only for the human being who is satisfied with it. It seems as if he can never exceed this limit, but if he is serious about knowing more, there need be no limit for him. But to what extent he longs for increased knowledge is up to him, that is, he himself determines the limits of knowledge through his will. As soon as the human being fulfills the preconditions which guarantee him the transmission of knowledge, he has used his free will in the right way, for then he will be given profoundest wisdom without restriction. But if he is inclined to believe that God himself has set limits, then he will be content with what the world knows, and he will also feel no urge within himself to exceed the limits on his own authority. He is content, and this is always a step backwards, for only in constant striving does man progress. It must be understandable to him that God, as the truth himself, also wants to guide his creations into it, and that he is therefore always willing to hand out the truth, but that he cannot impart it to everyone who has no desire for it. It is precious good which people can acquire if only they want it, but which also has to be desired if it is to be offered to people. But the fact that it is not offered to all people indiscriminately does not justify the assumption that God withholds the knowledge of his rule and activity from all people, that he wants to leave his creatures in ignorance. He gives them mental information without fail, and it is solely up to the human being's will whether and to what extent he wants to be instructed by beings who can give him information. But precisely this human will is very small and weak. Since the human being first has to fulfill conditions in order to be introduced into the spiritual kingdom, his will first has to become active and work diligently on himself. And this seems impracticable to most people, and thus they don't try it either. And these are the limits which the human being sets for himself because he does not have the will to exceed these limits. And he does not know what he is forfeiting to himself by doing so. He does not know what bliss he can put himself into through increased knowledge, through the knowledge of things which would otherwise remain hidden from him. He does not know what spiritual wealth he could acquire if he so desired. God's unlimited love, however, nevertheless conveys his knowledge to people because he wants to spread the truth amongst humanity. He informs them through human mouths how the human being can gain increased knowledge in order to encourage them to make the attempt themselves, because he wants to impart the most precious possessions to them for the salvation of their souls. Thus, he informs them that the human being should not be satisfied with the knowledge which is spread throughout the world. And he admonishes them to break through the barriers because they can do so if only they want to. He wants to impart unimagined knowledge to them and only requires their will, which shall prove itself by the human being fulfilling the prerequisites necessary to be guided into the deepened knowledge of God and his might and glory. Amen.